Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and we're going to discuss sugar-free foods and sugar alcohols. So before we get a little bit into this, I want to warn you I'm not feeling too well today, so I might have a cough or a sniffle or two. So bear with me, please. But the idea for this podcast came up out of a recent discussion with a client in which we were struggling to find variations to their diet that didn't cause digestive stress. So we had tried like a structure of diet, and they just said they kind of felt gassy and bloated and didn't feel very good energy all day. So we tried another style diet, same result. Another style, same result. And we had been playing around with like cutting out dairy, adding dairy back in, cutting out like gluten products, adding that back in. We tried a whole bunch of stuff, and I had told them on the diet plan there's a paragraph down on the bottom about like food additives and whatnot, and drinks, liquids, and it expresses the need to be careful for sugar-free items or sugar alcohols. So like being careful of chewing too much sugar-free gum, or drinking like drinks that have sugar alcohol, or protein bars that have sugar alcohols, because sugar alcohols can cause digestive stress, such as bloating and like bathroom issues, like cause lower degrees of energy level, because if you're having bloating and digestive stress, it's going to ruin your energy levels all day. So I kind of like revisited with them a couple of times in conversations where I'm like, are you sure you're not da 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 da? And they're like, yeah. And finally I said, listen, we've tried a billion things. Like, what are you doing with your sugar alcohols? And they said, well, I'm not having much. I'm just chewing a pack or two of gum a day, but I don't have any sugar alcohol drinks. And I said, you're chewing a pack or two of sugar alcohol gum a day? And they said yes. And this led us into the conversation of the pros and cons of when you ask somebody a general question such as, are you doing okay? And they say yes. That's dependent on them knowing what your definition is of okay versus their definition is of okay. So to that person, they thought 1 or 2 packs of sugar alcohol gum was okay. And hell no. So even just something as like 2 or 3 pieces in a single hour can mess someone's digestive stress system up. So it's important, like I said, to make sure we define this with people. And so if you're a trainer, you need to define with people how much sugar alcohol is okay. And we'll be listing that here at the end of the podcast. But when talking with people, it is funny that you'll often ask them something and you have a belief of the definition, they have a belief of the definition, but it isn't the same. So just kind of little eye openers. So I've been personal training for 17 years, and I still have these little eye openers all the time. So it happens. You know, you think you put it on a piece of paper, you think people read it, but hell, even I don't read directions for things. So we're all human. We all just kind of scan the paper for whatever interest we have at the moment we're scanning it, but we don't always notice every word. So, but in general, people use sugar-free foods and sugar alcohol-based foods. What sugar alcohol is, by the way, is just something that creates a sweet flavor in the food, but the sugar molecule that they're using doesn't have caloric energy to it, meaning your body can't break it down for calories. So it acts almost like fiber, and it just kind of like shovels through your body. And that's some of the reason why it causes digestive stress, because you're putting something into your body that your body can't digest. So it gets pissed off, and it just kind of runs its way through the system and kind of causes a little bit of havoc. Fiber, healthy fiber, can help you, like as it runs through your system, it can kind of clean out some blockage or excess stuff in your intestines. So there is help and benefit to fiber, but you can actually have too much fiber and it would cause the same type of digestive stress and bloating and water retention as having too much sugar alcohol can cause. But sugar alcohol tends to cause these effects at lower amounts of excess than fiber does. So our body tends to be more sensitive to sugar alcohol than it would towards fiber. And so that's why it tends to have that effect, is your body can't really break it down. So people eat it. The reasons why they'll report for having sugar alcohols in their diet is it allows them to still eat something sweet even when they're on a diet. So they're like, I just like it because it gives me a little bit of sweetness throughout the day that I don't normally get. So that's one of the reasons they'll use. Another reason is they'll say, well, sugar alcohol doesn't have any calories, so therefore it doesn't hurt anything. I can still get lean even while having sugar alcohol and sugar-free foods. And there is truth to that. So I've had clients who've stepped on stage and had six-pack abs and even veins in their abs and, won aesthetic competitions, and they were still drinking diet soda to the competition. They just weren't very sensitive to it or at all sensitive to it. And we typically cut it out the last week anyhow because it does cause water retention to some degree, even on people who aren't super sensitive to it. So that's something we look at all the time in my world for aesthetic athletes is diet drinks and sugar alcohol drinks and foods. They cause aesthetic effects when you get super lean. So if you're under 10% body fat and you have like an enormous amount of sugar alcohol one day, it's going to cause a water retention effect later in that day. So as it causes stress in the digestive system, it causes excess water retention, it causes gassiness, so their lower intestine will be bloated out a little bit. And therefore, if you see them posing, you're like, what the hell's wrong with your belly? Like your belly's pooched out. And you'll see that. So it becomes more obvious when somebody's super lean. So if someone isn't lean, it's not going to be as obvious. But you're still going to have all the discomfort effects. So that's what I want to talk about today in this podcast, is to review some of the believed pros. So some of the believed things that are positive that people will think about sugar alcohols, but what are the actual reality cons, the negatives? So for example, if somebody says, well, it allows me to taste sweetness on my diet while I'm still dieting. That is true, but it's not a good thing, okay? So when you taste sweetness in your diet, your body still holds on to the idea of that sweet thing. It says, oh, I'm getting something sweet. This should be very fast digesting, very easy digesting sugars. And then all of a sudden it gets the sugar in the body and it can't break it down, so therefore it doesn't get any energy. So it says, what the hell? Normally when you eat sweet things, that's candy, that's sugary food, right? Like Gatorade, sweet tea, fruit, like candy, stuff like that, is your body gets easy calories from that. So sometimes the effect it has is it said, oh, you ate something sweet, that should have been easy. We do want that, but maybe you need to eat more. Your body doesn't know what sugar alcohol really, like it doesn't have a brain inside of it that says, oh, this is sugar alcohol versus regular sugar. That's why this happened. It just says, hey, you fed me something sweet. I didn't get any energy from it. I normally get energy from sweet things. Eat more of them. You might not have eaten enough. So all of a sudden, your cravings throughout the day stay higher. So you will have higher degree of cravings when you have a diet that is higher in sugar alcohol. Okay? Higher in things that provide sweet flavors but without the calories. Your body is going to increase its craving for sweet things if it knows that sweet things are possible. Whereas if you take sugar alcohols out of your diet, okay, and you get through the little bit of transitional period of discomfort and not having something sweet, okay, it'll actually reduce your cravings. So if you were to reduce sugar alcohols for 3 to 5 days, by the 6th, 7th, 8th day or whatever, you're going to find that your cravings are significantly lower. I've seen this happen hundreds of times. Hundreds. So I've said in past podcasts, I've been a personal trainer for 17 years. I've worked with well over 1,000 clients. I stopped counting at 1,000 because there's really no need to count any higher than that. I've worked taught at the local university, have over 500 student history, taught for over 7 years. So I've helped an enormous amount of people with diet. So like I said, well over 1,000. I've been doing this for 17 years. So I can tell you for a fact that I've seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. That if someone gives up artificial sweeteners and sweetnesses in their diet, that they will reduce their cravings. That happens every time. So sometimes by you keeping that little bit of something sweet in your diet, you're actually prolonging the sensation of cravings that you're having. And if you succumb to those cravings at night, say when you're lonely and you're bored and you're kind of tired, or you just kind of like habitually grab something to eat, so at night you'll break on those cravings, and you find your diets are always cyclical. You do well for a little while, you break on a craving, you feel bad, you kind of feel defeated, you do shitty for a little bit, then you build up your courage again, you try really hard again, but again you break on cravings. If you always have trouble with cravings, you have to watch and see how many fake artificial type sweet things am I having in my diet. You want to reduce them to as minimal as possible, and it'll reduce your your cravings. That includes things like coffee drinks. So any kind of additives to liquids like coffees, teas, diet sodas, sugar-free gums, sugar-free candies. I've had people buy a bunch of weird shit that was sugar-free, like pancake syrups and gosh, they make so much stuff nowadays because companies know that you'll buy it. So it's not that it's actually good for you or that it's effective. They just know they can make money. So companies will always make money before they can really give a shit about helping you. It is insanely rare that a business would forego money because they know it's the right thing to do for their customers. Okay? I wish it was a normal practice, but it's incredibly rare. So just because companies make a bunch of sugar-free stuff and they tell you it's healthy, that doesn't mean it's actually good for you, okay? It doesn't mean that it won't impair fat loss. So if I drink calorie-free soda, I will get no calories from that. So I will get the taste of soda, but I won't have to worry about the fat loss impairing effects of any calories. However, you're going to have increased cravings, and as we talk about here in a second, you're going to have enormous amounts of digestive stress. So water bloat, cramps, gasiness, all this stuff. So the other effect of having still something sweet in your diet and artificially sweet is that it delays your ability to taste natural sweetness in the foods that you would normally eat. So when clients remove sugar alcohols from their day, overwhelmingly they reduce cravings. When clients remove sugar alcohols from their day, overwhelmingly they report tasting sweetness in normal foods, such as sweet potatoes and certain vegetables. So they'll report saying, wow, I didn't know vegetables tasted this good. And that's actually true. They had always had these high sugary, crazy things in their diet. So the sugar in vegetables, the sweetness in vegetables, your body wasn't sensitive to it. It was almost desensitized by how sweet and sugary all the other shit was that you were having. So when you get rid of the fake sweetnesses, you then tend to be able to better taste the natural sweetnesses. And this is, again, true hundreds and hundreds of times over. So overwhelmingly, people are going to make up some kind of bullshit excuse of why they won't want to give up their sugar alcohol thing. I'm telling you right now that if you want to live on your excuses, go ahead. Just cut the podcast out. Do whatever you want to do and live in the same misery of cyclical, failed diets. But if you're wanting to make a change, if you want to get rid of the digestive stress, so if you think you have irritable bowel syndrome, no matter what diet you follow, it probably isn't irritable bowel syndrome. You're probably doing something to irritate your bowels, which is drinking and eating sugar-free alcohol. Okay, sugar alcohols. So this is stuff that if you just commit to kind of toughening yourself up for a week and just try it for a week, you'll find by the end of the week that there will be some effect. It's a little more or less depending on the person, but there will be some effect. So if you get a good effect, it might be enough to motivate you to stay off this stuff. If you get a small effect, who knows, maybe you'll go back to your old ways, but at least you'll have seen that there is some effect to it. So that's something to try. Another excuse, like we said, a false positive, is that people say if there's no calories, there's no harm. Again, that's a false positive. So what's the reality negative? Is that other than the things we've already talked about, being that sugar alcohols and the fake sweetnesses keep cravings high, they also prevent you from tasting natural food as sweet as it should be. It causes that digestive stress we talked about, that bloating. So I've seen this, like I said, hundreds of times. So I'm going to give you a couple stories. So one story was my mom was getting ready for a bodybuilding competition. And I believe it was her first one. Now, I don't know, it might have been her first or second one, but one of the diets, she was freaking out a little bit the last week or two. She was really struggling with trying to eat the calorie level that we needed to keep her under 10% body fat, but keep up her active, physically, ridiculously active job. So she ran a daycare at the time, so she had kids, about 6 to 8 kids between 1.5 and 4 years old, at her house from 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. She then would eat dinner and go work out from about 6 to 7, be home by 7:30, 8 o'clock, have to do paperwork and all that stuff for the business, be done by 9:30, 10, pass out, wake up the next day, do it again. So that was her routine. And it was her routine on very minimal calories. So it was enough calories to be healthy. We weren't unhealthy, but she was under 10% body fat, and I would argue probably under 6. We had veins on her abs. So her ab wall had veins. She had no saddlebag fat, no butt fat. So there was no wrinkles anywhere. There was no poochy stuff. When she jumped, the only thing that shook was her chest. So that's how lean she was. She was incredibly lean. We were even told at her show that she was the leanest contestant, male or female. We were told by multiple judges that they were incredibly impressed with how lean she was. So that was the dedication of effort that she had put in. So she busted her ass and she earned every compliment that she got. But in the process of making that happen, I remember one day she freaked out a little bit. She couldn't sit around the house anymore. So she asked my dad to go with her and go for a walk. Well, they went for a walk. It was a 40-minute walk that she shouldn't have done because it was beyond her caloric intake at the time. But she also chewed I think 2 packs of sugar-free gum that day. So the next day, I was home from college, and we were at my grandparents' house, and my mom wanted to show her posing to her parents, which would be my grandparents. She started to take off her shirt. She had she had clothes underneath, so she had her posing suit underneath. But she didn't get her shirt about an inch above her belly button before I said, "What the hell did you do?" And I actually finished that sentence before she even had her shirt off. And she looked at me shocked. And she said, "What?" And I said, "What the hell happened?" I said, "What is wrong with your stomach?" I said, "You have so much water. What in the hell did you do?" And I didn't mean it in an aggressive way. I was just astonished at what the hell had happened since the last time I had seen her. And she's like, "Well, I've still been training, I've still been this," and rightfully so, because I'm not trying to pick on her right now, but she just tried to defend herself. And I was like, "No, you did something different. Something absolutely 100% you did something different. What was it?" So she told me about the walk, she told me about the sugar-free gum. So then I told her that that's why we don't chew sugar-free gum, because it causes enormous amounts of water retention and digestive stress. So she got scolding a little bit, and we made sure she didn't chew any more sugar-free gum for the rest of the week because it was about a week out from the show. And it took a day or two, but finally the water reduced, and she was back to looking her clean, low body water retention self. But you could see that so blatantly obvious. And it was amazing about how clear-cut that was. And when you have people who are sub 10% body fat and even lower than that, it's fun because those small differences can make huge visual impacts. And that allows you to really see the difference. So if somebody's 40, 50 pounds overweight, and they say, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't feel any bloating whenever I eat sugar alcohols." Okay, that might be true that you don't feel it because you're already so much overweight and you already have so much bloating going on, but it doesn't mean it's not still happening. So it also causes just discomfort. So if you have a lot of gas throughout the day, that can be one of the reasons. If you have a lot of bloating, that again could be one of the reasons. If you have a lot of acid reflux, that again could be one of the reasons. So you might not see the water retention effect, but there are still going to be effects that are happening underneath. Another client example is, actually I already told you guys that one. The one where the client, we had to change their diet about 1 billion ways, and then finally we retouched on what was going on with sugar alcohols, and she said she was having a pack or 2 of gum a day, and we cut that out and she felt a lot better. Another example is myself. So I've done some extreme dieting before where I lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks or less. One time I lost 50 pounds in 8 weeks. I've done other extreme diets where I took off 70 pounds in 10 months. I've done a bunch of other little kind of temporary small little experiments and stuff. And one trick that I've used is, this sounds sadistic, so I'm not actually suggesting this, but when you do an extreme diet, and I know that they're not healthy, I'm just trying to prove like a scientific point to myself, is I'm just trying to see if I can do the goal of the day or the task of the moment. So I would say to myself is I'm ridiculously hungry. I'm in incredible like kind of just discomfort and annoyance because I'm so damn hungry. So I would drink an entire 2 liter of diet soda and I would try to finish it in under an hour. That would make me ridiculously bloated. I would feel ridiculously uncomfortable, but it was at least a different type of pain. So I had the pain of my stomach being empty, or I had the pain of my stomach being bloated. Sometimes it was nice to just switch the pains. I was just tired of the same damn pain. So I would drink a 2 liter of diet soda, feel freaking miserable, but thank God it was at least a different misery. So then, often, like within an hour or so, I'd get up and try to walk, go for a walk. Sometimes I'd try to do it right away, but that was usually not very successful because I felt so uncomfortable. But I would then get up and go for a walk. Usually by the time I got back from the walk, I was feeling better, and then I'd start to slowly feel back towards the hunger pains. So like I said, I'm not recommending this. I'm just saying that I could count on the effect of the sugar alcohol and the diet soda to cause me to be uncomfortably bloated. I could count on that so much that I used it on purpose to get me out of a different type of pain into that pain. So that's how consistent and how we know for a fact this happens is because I've done it to myself a bunch of times. So anytime I tell you guys stuff in the podcast, there's going to be knowledge base on it. So I have good degrees. So I have a master's in nutrition. I have a personal training certification through American College of Sports Medicine. I have an undergrad in health and phys ed. I've also read a bunch of books. I've had a subscription to a medical journal, and I've researched through medical journals all the time. So there's a ton of like formal education, but then there's the practical education of the 1,000+ clients, 500+ student history, and then all the experimental crazy shit I've done to myself. So this is an enormous amount of knowledge put into the last 20 years that you guys are getting to listen to. And I'm glad and thankful, and I hope that there's some value in it, and I hope to continue to build the value of what my knowledge might be. But I think it's helpful to know that this knowledge isn't coming from just, oh, I read an article, or oh, I heard from a single friend this, and this. This is thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of information. So, the reason why I'm making a point of explaining that is a lot of times it's very difficult to get people to come off of sugar-based foods because they're going to feel like I'm already in so much misery from this diet that if I give up this sweet thing, I'm just going to hate life altogether. What they don't realize is that sweet thing is making them hate the diet worse than they need to. If you got rid of that last little thing, if you just fully committed to the process, things will get a lot better. And it's amazing how true that is outside of the gym as well, in our regular life. When we still try to hold on to some sense of control, when we still try to fight some process where we give 90% away but we don't do that last 10%, it almost always ends up in a shitty experience. If we were to commit fully and do it all the way, we would actually see all the benefit. So you think about trying to mend a relationship. If you try to say all the right things, but you hold on to grudges, that won't work. Okay? You got to start over. You got to start with a clean slate. So you got to apply this stuff everywhere in life. So if you want to try to become a better person, but you try to hold on to that one or two, kind of bad vices you have, that stuff will still seep through. It'll still come out. So you have to fully commit to stuff if you're going to see the full benefits. You don't get to give 90% and get 100. That's not how life works. Okay? So that's why I'm taking the time to say this is a lot of times people fight on this concept, but they're really just fighting themselves. You're hurting yourself. Okay? So another negative con that we see with people who use sugar-free foods and sugar alcohols in their diets is they often are using them to hold on to low-quality habits. Okay? Meaning that there was something they used to do with sugar foods that now they're trying to replace with sugar-free foods when that whole damn habit should be replaced. So, for example, I have people try to eat. I'm just struggling here to kind of think of an example now because there's probably like 4 million in my head and I can't cipher through. So one, for example, was a person, they wanted to have like waffles for breakfast. And I had told them that there were better carbohydrates to have than waffles. But they wanted to have their damn waffles, so they soaked their waffles in sugar-free syrup. So that way they could still taste the sweetness, they could still have waffles. And maybe they got freaking wheat waffles versus white waffles. Who gives a shit? It's still not the right type of food. So they would be holding on to that shitty habit of, I used to have waffles and syrup, I still want to have waffles and syrup. Whereas they should just be moving on to what is a healthier breakfast? What are healthier foods that taste maybe not quite as good, but they're going to let me get all the benefits from my diet? And you'll be amazed. They're actually really good foods. Like, there are ways to eat healthy that taste good. So, overwhelmingly, the most reason why people think health food sucks is because their knowledge of how to prepare food and cook food sucks. So that's the number one problem. And the effort that they should be putting into cooking healthier, better food, they put into trying to fake in their old bullshit foods. So people don't put their efforts in the right direction. They put their efforts into how to hold on to bad habits, old habits, while trying to get new results, which is a stupid ass process. That's never going to work. Okay? You can't hold on to old habits and get new results. Become a new person. You have to let go of old habits to become a new person. That's the way it works. Okay? So, there's also one little caution I want to give before we wrap this up, is if a food is labeled as no sugar added, that 100% does not mean there's no sugar in it. So I've given this example before, but I had a lady who used to eat applesauce all the time, and she would write in her paper applesauce. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You're not supposed to have applesauce. And she's like, oh, it says no sugar added. So she thought it was sugar free. And I was like, no, you can't have that. Can't have that at the time. For her diet structure, that was inappropriate at the time. So I said, no, can't do that. And I said, didn't you read the label? And she said, well, the label says no sugar added. I said, no, read the actual label. Like the grams of fats, grams of carbohydrates, grams of proteins. And all of a sudden I hear silence on the phone. And then I hear, oh my God. So I was like, yeah, put on your damn glasses next time you go shopping and read the damn labels. So she had thought, since she saw in big bold lettering, no sugar added, she thought it meant no sugar contained. So just because something is labeled no sugar added doesn't mean there's no sugar in it. So make sure you read labels. Okay? So to wrap this up, do you need to avoid all sugar alcohols totally throughout your day? My answer is going to be, why flirt with it? Yes, just avoid them. But that's not like super realistic for most people. So I'm going to give some concessions here. And these are concessions that I've seen still work with clients. Is if you limit your sugar alcohol, it depends on per person, by the way. So I'm going to give you some numbers here, and you're going to have to experiment. If you want to have any sugar alcohol, then you have to open yourself to the need to experiment. If you just go down to 0, done. No experimenting needed. Okay? But usually most people can handle between 10 grams to 20 grams of sugar alcohol per day. And very rarely can people handle that much in a single meal. So sometimes if you look at protein bars, they'll have like 20 grams of sugar alcohol in them, and the person gets ridiculously sick after they eat the protein bar, but they don't recognize it's a protein bar. So the protein bar, if it has 20 grams of sugar alcohol and you're getting discomfort, within 20 to 60 minutes after that protein bar, that's why. Okay? So what I tend to do is tell people is, at most, only have 20 grams of sugar alcohol per day, not having that in a single sitting. If you're still having discomfort, you're still having cravings, you still feel like there's room to maybe improve, you drop it down to 15 or 10. Eventually, you try to stay under 10. And I would argue try to go for 0. But what you'll notice is, as you get your sugar alcohols lower and lower and lower per day, you're just going to feel better. So if you want to use some artificial sweeteners to get through your morning, to use some coffee and tea, okay. We can argue that there isn't going to be much sugar stuff needed for that, but it's going to give you a good benefit, get you moving. But then try to avoid it the rest of the day. Don't do sugar-free gum. Okay, it's just going to mess you up. Just get rid of that. Okay, so just find other habits. So if you have a chewing fixation, cut up celery and carrots and chew on that stuff throughout the day. So otherwise, just learn how to not do it. Just discipline yourself to not chew gum. So everybody has something they use to kind of cope with stress. Eventually, you just have to toughen yourself up. Now, I understand that that's going to rub some people the wrong way. You might be in the process of toughening yourself up. And maybe you let go of a worse habit to now use sugar-free gum. Okay, but don't stop there. Challenge yourself, can I reduce the amount of gum I eat? Instead of a pack a day, can I only have 2 or 3 pieces a day? Eventually, if I do that, can I find out there might be only one time in the day that I might feel like I need it the most? So I can get myself down to 1 piece per day. And eventually you can find that maybe in order to reduce stress, instead of having a sugar-free piece of gum, maybe I can call a friend or text a friend and share some jokes. So there's actually dad jokes on Instagram. It's an Instagram channel. And I'll kind of like screenshot some jokes every now and then and send them to friends. And it's amazing. If you're having a little bit of a low period in the afternoon and you can shoot a friend and make them laugh and they send a couple fun texts back, it motivates you as much as that gum would motivate you. And it kind of pushes you through those down spots and it can keep you going. So it's amazing how just connecting with other people, sharing a laugh can reduce stress, and much more effectively than habits like sugar-free gum and smoking and stuff like that. So just some thoughts. So that's the idea, is if you're going to use it as minimal